Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Vallabha Jaya Gopi Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nastaprayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. So we are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, Maharaj Rahukana meets Jada Bharat. Text number 6, and this is a prose, so therefore I will just read it. It's a very long prose. Aho kashtam bhratar vyaktam uru parishranto dirgham atvanam eka eva uhivan suchiram nati piva na samhana ango jarasa chopatruto bhavan shakhe no eva para eta shangatini iti bahu vipralapto pi avidyaya rachita dravya guna karmasyaya sva charma kalevara vashtuni samsthana vishesha ham mameti anadyaropita mitya pratyayo brahma bhutas tushvim shubikam shibikam purvavat uvaha. So, I don't know if you want to do the word by word. It's quite long, so I think I will just read a translation. Translation purport given by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. So King Rahukana told Jada Bharat, "How troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friend, I see that you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you?" In this way, the king criticized Jada Bharata with sarcastic words. Yet, despite being criticized in this way, Jada Bharata had no bodily conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with a lump of matter, a combination of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its 2 hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity, Aham Brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. Purport: Jada Bharata was completely liberated. He did not even care when the dacoits attempted to kill his body. He knew that he certainly was not the body. Even if the body were killed, he would not have cared, for he was thoroughly convinced of the proposition found in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Na hanyate hanyamane sarire. He knew that he could not be killed even if his body were killed. Although he did not protest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his agent could not tolerate the injustice of the dacoits. Therefore he was saved by the mercy of Krishna, and the dacoits were killed. In this case, while carrying the palanquin, he also knew that he was not the body. This body was very strong and stout, in sound condition and quite competent to carry the palanquin. Due to his being freed from the bodily conception, the sarcastic words of the king did not at all affect him. The body is created according to one's karma, and material nature supplies the ingredients for the development of a certain type of body. The soul the body covers is different from the bodily construction. Therefore, anything favorable or mischievous done to the body does not affect the spirit soul. The Vedic injunction is asango hi ayam purusha. The spirit soul is always unaffected by material arrangements. Om Ajnanatimarandasya Jnananchalashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stabidam Yena Bodily Swayam Rupam Kadamakyam Tadadi Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Tamsa Jivam Satvedam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vidamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Shude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarabhyasya Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ye Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. King Rahugana told Jadabharata, "How troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued, because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friend, I see that you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you?" In this way, the king criticized Jadabharata with sarcastic words. Yet, despite being criticized in this way, Jadabharata had no bodily conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with the lump of matter, a combination of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its 2 hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity, Aham Brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. So Hare Krishna, good morning. So we are here in this section where Rahugana or Jadabharata is meeting with the king. Rahugana, the Vedas, they speak in different types of languages. And particularly, there are 3 types of way how the Vedic scriptures speak to us. One is in the mood of a Prabhu. That means that the Vedas, they teach that they are in the way that they are the masters and they're teaching to the servants. So the language that they use is that of a master teaching that of a servant. That is one way how the Vedic scriptures teach. Another way is they teach in the form as a mitra, meaning as a friend. When they teach as a Prabhu, they give instructions, they give recommendations, but when they speak with the language of a mitra, they speak as a friend and give some advice. They are also patiently waiting. They are not putting instructions, but they are giving advices, especially in form of pastimes and history, and they give some arguments, and in this way, as a friend, they try to give you some good advice. And then there is a third type of language, which is called as a priya. They speak as a beloved to a beloved in poetry form. And Jiva Goswami, he is mentioning this because he wants to establish that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest pramana, the highest truth or highest source of knowledge. And Jiva Goswami, he is giving different arguments why the Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost scripture even among Shrutis and Smritis. And he is giving different arguments. And then he's also making this comment that usually a Vedic text, it only speaks of one of these three languages. Usually the Vedas, they speak only of in the mood of Prabhu. The Puranas usually speak of in the mood of Mitra. But what is special in the Srimad Bhagavatam is that it combines all three languages. So it speaks sometimes as a Prabhu, sometimes as a Mitra, and sometimes as a Priya. And this makes the Bhagavatam special. And so here we see also a special type of language, sarcasm, used here by Rahugana. And I think it's quite interesting. Now Rahugana is sarcastically addressing Bharata, and he is kind of mocking him with some irony. But the Bhagavatam he's using, or the teaching from the Bhagavatam with the pastime of Bharata, is starting from him as being a king, then becoming a deer, and then becoming a Jada Bharat. Bhagavatam is at the end reversing this sarcasm. Here, Rahugana is addressing with sarcasm to Bharat, but the Bhagavatam will then turn it around and say, whose life is actually irony? Is the life of the Jada Bharat the irony, or is actually the life of King Rahugana the irony? And in this way, it will kind of give us the sarcasm of our material life, our material conceptions. So I think this is very interesting. Unfortunately, I am illiterate in Sanskrit, so I don't know quite. I can imagine that this text here, that this prose is very special to read with these sarcastic words. With some Tamil words, I can imagine the sarcasm out of here, but I think as a text, as a literature, I think this prose would be very interesting for one who knows Sanskrit. But we have the English translation, and I was thinking to go through a little bit of what sarcastic statement actually the king is making here. He's already starting with my dear brother. And brother in Sanskrit means brata. And I think he's making here a word play, because he's speaking to Bharata, so brata and Bharata, probably he's making a word play there. And brata means my dear brother, but actually he's not considering Jada Bharata as a brother, because he's considering him as a servant. So he's making this wordplay and saying my brother, but actually he's not meaning him, he's not addressing him as a brother, he's not considering him on an equal level. So already there he makes kind of a wordplay. And then he continues, he says, you seem to be fatigued because you are carrying the palanquin without assistance for a long time. No, this is not true. They just started to carry the palanquin, and they had a change in the shift of the carriers, and they just started now to carry the palanquin, and already then Bharat Maharaj, Jada Bharata is walking not so smoothly because he's not on a walk on the ants. So this is the first the second sarcastic statement here, that actually it just started now. Further, the king is saying, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. No, Jada Bharat is a very young man, so he's actually not old. The king is making the statements, you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. No, actually Jada Bharat is very strong and firm. This is why they chose him in the first place. They saw him and thought, okay, this is a strong person, so let him carry the palanquin. And the last sentence by the king, aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you? No, it's the opposite way around. Jada Bharata is not cooperating with the carriers. All the other three carriers, they are cooperating. It's Jada Bharata who is not cooperating. So in this way, King Rahugana is making some sarcastic words. He's mocking Bharat Maharaj, or actually Jada Bharata. And as I mentioned, actually the Bhagavatam will then turn around these sarcastic statements. Rahugana thinks that the life of Jada Bharata is an irony, but the Bhagavatam will now turn away or make it the opposite way and say, no, the life of Rahugana is an irony. And for this, there is a quote by Charlie Chaplin, and I think this quote is quite fitting to this section of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada, he liked Charlie Chaplin because Charlie Chaplin had great humor, and he's making one statement, and I think it's quite fitting to this passage, or in general to the whole sections from Maharaj Parada to Jada Bharata's transition. And he's saying life is a tragedy in close-up, but comedy in long shots. So if you look at life in a very zoomed in, close-up, everything will seem as a tragedy. Probably as a child, when the parents didn't buy us the candy in the shop, we would think we would start to scream and cry, and all the other fellows in the shop will look at your parents and say, can you not raise a child properly? And as a child, because you didn't get the candy, you would think the world is broken down, no one is kind to me, no one likes me, what is happening here? But when you then look it now and look back from a distance, it's just, you don't consider it as a tragedy anymore. It's kind of a comedy. You think you laugh back at this statement. So what Charlie Chaplin means is that the more you close in or zoom in to a situation, it looks more as a tragedy, but the more and more you take a step back, it feels like a comedy. And I think his life itself was a tragedy. I think he had quite problems and miseries. But I think this statement is quite fitting, because when we zoom out, look back into the past, then we think, this was not so bad actually. And the more and more we zoom out, when we are at the end of our life and look at this life, then we think, okay, that problem was probably not that serious. And the special thing is if you can even zoom out more, not just looking one life, but life to lives to lives to lives, then you will see that every problem you had in that specific life, in the spectrum of eternity, it's not a problem at all. It's small things. And this is especially the case with Jadabharata, because he can zoom out very, very far away, because he remembers the previous two lives. He remembers his life as a Maharaj Bharata, he remembers his life as a deer, now he's in the body of a Jadabharat, so therefore he's zooming out and he's seeing what he has lived through already, as an emperor, then as a renunciant, then as a deer, and now here he's a madman, as an avadut. So he's looking from this distance and sees actually these problems that now Rahugana is causing him, the harsh words of Rahugana, they are not at all a big problem. And this, then Jadabharata will, these sarcastic words from Rahugana, Jadabharata will not offend Rahugana. He will use very gentleman talk later, but the Bhagavatam shows that whose life is actually the irony, is that of a Jadabharat or of the Rahugana, because Jadabharata will tell him, to the king, my dear king, today you are the king, and I am your servant, but tomorrow, who knows, you might be the servant and I will be the king. Because Jadabharata, he has this experience. He was the emperor of this world, and he knows how time passes and takes away all the temporary things away. So once you are a emperor who everyone respects, then you are a deer, no one cares, and now you are a madman, more than no one cares about you. So this is the irony of this material life, and we put so much designations, emphasis on our designations and bodily identifications. Prabhupada mentions because we have our identification with our gross and subtle bodies, we are putting on these upadhis, and then we think, you are thin, you are fat, I am in distress, I am in thirst, hunger, I am in fear, I am in disagreement, I am in desires, I am at an old age, I am sleepy, I am angry, I am lamenting, I am in illusion. All these things, Jadabharata will mention later, arise because we have these bodily upadhis, these material upadhis, identifications. And if it would just put it away, then we will see that I am Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am eternal, always blissful, always full of knowledge, and more than that, I am a servant of Krishna. And if we realize that, then any problem or whatever comes to our lives will be peanuts. I think when we are in this situation of Jadabharat, when the king would shout at us and blame us, then we would think this is a tragedy. But Jadabharat looks at this and probably he feels some humor and says, come on, I was an emperor myself, and now you are telling me, as an emperor I have ordered other servants, and now this situation is turned around, now you are ordering me, but this is just temporary. So this is the kind of the friendly statement that the Bhagavatam makes, the Mitra statement. And if one realizes this, and if he realizes that he's a servant of Krishna, then there is no problem in his life. Prabhupada says, in the life of a devotee, only then he can experience peace. No one else can. Other people cannot experience peace. Only a devotee who has given up the material designations and has understood that he is a devotee of Krishna, he has actually peace, and no one else can bring disturbance to him. No external elements and no one outside can bring disturbance to that devotee. So, because when one is in that nature or in that realization, he's taking up the nature of Krishna himself. Krishna has certain qualities, and if we understand that we are servants of Krishna, we also take up Krishna's qualities. And what is Krishna's qualities? And one quality that Krishna has is that no one can actually insult Krishna. You can try to insult Krishna, but it will not affect Krishna, because he's transcendental, he's absolute. Krishna doesn't care for temporary things, he even doesn't care for his reputation, what reputation exists in this material world, because he is transcendental, absolute. Everything for Krishna is a play, is a lila. So everything Krishna takes with a humor, playfully, in a lila way. And devotees, they have similar nature than Krishna, because they are serving Krishna. They also take everything as a play, as a humor, and whenever someone comes and insults them, they are not affected. There is this pastime which happens with Bhrigu Muni and Lord Vishnu. It happens time to time that the sages, the munis, they usually ask the question, who is the supreme entity, who is the supreme being? Because usually they think that the three murtis, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, they are the predominating deity, and then wonder who among them is the supreme. And then there is a big discussions and big debates. And one time, in this pastime, they appoint Bhrigu Muni to find out who is the chief being in this universe. And Bhrigu Muni, he is then saying, okay, let's visit them, the three of them, the three deities, and see, let's find out who is the chief one. So Bhrigu Muni is going to Brahma and want to see how Brahma is and how he behaves. But when he was approaching Brahma, Brahma didn't recognize Bhrigu Muni. He was, I think, engaged in some musical arts or musical performance. He was listening to something, so he didn't realize that Bhrigu Muni has arrived, and Bhrigu Muni got angry, and then only then Brahma realized that the Muni has arrived, and Brahma wanted to ask for forgiveness, but Bhrigu Muni was so angry, he said, no, you didn't respect me, so for me, you are not the highest among the three. I think he even curses Brahma. I don't know exactly, but I think he tells him that he will not have any temples. So it's interesting, therefore, we don't see really temples for Brahma, a worship of Brahma. So then he's going later, Muni is going to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is engaged in dance, he's dancing, and so he also hasn't recognized that Bhrigu Muni has arrived. And again Bhrigu Muni gets angry and with Shiva, and then he is also chastising him, cursing him, and leaves Lord Shiva. Now Bhrigu Muni thinks, okay, the last one I have to go is to Lord Vishnu. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Shri Govindai ki. And there, a really interesting thing happens. As usual, Lord Vishnu is sleeping. He's sleeping on the Ananta Shesh. We just discussed how everything is a play for Krishna. So just this scene, like that he's creating the universe while laying, while sleeping, this is already the humor of Krishna. If we speak about comedy and tragedy and humor and sarcasm, so we see actually Krishna, everything is a humor for him, a play. So here as Vishnu, he's sleeping, and definitely he knows that Bhrigu Muni has arrived. But he pretends that he hasn't seen him and sleeps, continues sleeping, pretending to sleep. And this is the humor of Krishna. And Bhrigu Muni, he comes, he calls out for him, he's trying to wake him up, but Lord Vishnu is such in a deep sleep that Bhrigu Muni got so angry that he kicked him on his chest. So, I think this is such an offense we cannot even imagine to do, to kick on the chest of Lord Vishnu. And what happens? Lord Vishnu wakes up, he sees that Bhrigu Muni is there, and Lord Vishnu starts to ask for forgiveness. He's saying, "Oh, Bhrigu Muni, please excuse me, I didn't recognize that you came. I think your feet must hurt because my heart is very hard, so your feet must be very hurting. So please let me worship your feet, let me give you some massage. I will perform a puja, I will make an abhishek for your lotus feet." And in this way Vishnu invited Bhrigu Muni. And this kind of brought Bhrigu Muni out of the concept. He didn't expect this response from Vishnu, so he was completely perplexed. Bhrigu Muni didn't know what to say. He just kicked him and now he's being worshipped. So he just said, "Thank you, Lord Vishnu, I just wanted to visit you. Actually, I'm leaving now, please, it's everything fine." So he went away from this place. So we see someone wanted to offend Krishna, but it's not possible to offend, because Krishna is apart and aloof from these designations. But what happens is then, Lakshmiji, she saw all this scene, and she could not tolerate that something happened to Lord Vishnu, and she got angry. And this is the manner or etiquette that one has, that if some insult or some offenses comes to us, or to a devotee, the devotee, he will not defend himself, he will not protect himself. He just says, "I am just a servant of Krishna, whatever Krishna desires, let us come to me." But what will happen is that the others, the devotees, they will come and say, protect that particular devotee who got offended. So the offended devotee, he will not defend himself, but others and Krishna, they will come and serve and protect that devotee. That's the etiquette, or that's the mood that they have. And similarly, Krishna doesn't care if someone bad mouths him, if someone gives him bad reputation, but the devotees cannot tolerate this, and they will start to defend Krishna. Avajananti mamuda manushim thanum ashritam. Krishna says, fools deride him. Right? Fools in this world, they are people who give Krishna bad reputation, and they think Krishna is just a normal man, a normal human. But these words doesn't affect Krishna, because there is the irony
of that statement is that these fools who are criticizing Krishna, they got this body from Krishna, they got the intelligent and thinking capacity from Krishna, and everything they use for maintenance comes from Krishna. So all this is coming from Krishna, and now they criticize Krishna. So in the eyes of Krishna, for him this is just humor, for him it's just comedy. He cannot take seriously these statements by the fools, by the muras. So they have no self-defense. Devotees, they don't defend themselves, but they defend others. And we see in the Shastras, also in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many examples. We see Srivas Thakur, he started to have congregational chanting in his home with Mahaprabhu and the other devotees. And some people, they didn't like this, that at Srivas Thakur's house there is kirtan going on. So they wanted to give him bad reputation. And one person, Gopal Chapala, he was so envious of Srivas that he put some paraphernalia that one uses for Durga Puja, he put them in front of Srivas Thakur's house, with the intention that people will see that Srivas Thakur is actually worshipping Kali or Durga, and in this way he wanted to give bad reputation to Srivas Thakur. And Srivas Thakur, next morning he comes out and he sees the paraphernalia in front of his home, and then people walk by and say, "Oh, Srivas Thakur, what are you doing?" And Srivas Thakur, he didn't defend. He says, yes, look at me, look at his paraphernalia, this is the real me. And I am this person, I am not a devotee of Krishna, I am worshipping Durga, and this is my true identity. And then he just went inside. He didn't at all try to defend himself. It's similarly to Jada Bharat, who now got criticized by the king, but because Jada Bharat and Srivas Thakur, they both didn't care of their reputation, because they have much more important things to do. So they didn't defend themselves. But what happens that Krishna gets angry with the offenders of devotees, and we see later that Gopal Chapalu gets leprosy, and only then when Gopal Chapalu comes back and asks forgiveness at Srivas Thakur, then he gets freed. Also we see in the pastime of Rupa and Jiva Goswami, in their relationship, one time Vallabha Bhatta, he comes to Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami was writing his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Vallabha Bhatta, he read this and said, "Yeah, it looks nice, but I have some improvements, I have some editing advice for you." And then Rupa Goswami said, "Okay, please, you can edit my Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu." And then Vallabha Bhatta, he goes out, he wants to, I think, take a bath or so, and Jiva Goswami, he observed this situation, and he follows Vallabha Bhatta, and then addresses Vallabha Bhatta, confronts Vallabha Bhatta and says, "Look, Vallabha Bhatta, what do you mean? You have some editing advice for Rupa Goswami? Rupa Goswami's work is perfect. What are you gonna improve?" Huh? And then they have a discussion, and at the end, Vallabha Bhatta understands Jiva Goswami's statements, and he agrees, "Okay, I was wrong. The way Rupa Goswami has written the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is already perfect. There is nothing to correct." So he's going back to Rupa Goswami and says, "I'm not going to edit it. I just understood how perfect your work is." And then Vallabha Bhatta leaves. But Rupa Goswami then calls Jiva Goswami and says, why did you tell him this? Why did you speak to Vallabhabhatta? Vallabhabhatta was so merciful that he came and wanted to give me some advice. He wanted to give me mercy, and out of his kindness he offered some editing. Why couldn't you tolerate these words? And Rupa Goswami said to Jiva Goswami, you have to go away now, and when your mind is more calm and steady, then you can come back. Because Rupa Goswami, he didn't care for his reputation. Whatever was told to him, he had better things to do. And he, in this way, is teaching also to us and to Jiva Goswami, even though Rupa Goswami wrote everything correctly, and someone wanted to correct something where there is no need for correction. This is the position of the devotees, of the pure devotees. Yes, and I just was thinking, you mentioned that no one can insult actually Krishna, and if one has realized himself that he is a devotee of Krishna, no one can insult that devotee as well. Huh? Even we can try to use words and blame a devotee, but the devotee will not take them serious. And I was just thinking of the pastime of Shishupal, where he is insulting Krishna in the assembly hall in Indraprastha. Amongst all these great personalities, they were sitting there. Many sages and sadhus were there, which Yudhishthira Maharaj invited for the Rajasuya sacrifice. And then amongst them, they chose Krishna as a chief. They were worshipping him. And now Shishupal could not tolerate this, and he now starts to shout, use some words, bad words, insulting words to Krishna. We see this in the Bhagavatam, and then there is a commentary, and also Srila Prabhupada mentioned this, of Sridhar Swami, that actually every word used by Shishupal, one can turn it around and make it a glorification of Krishna. So every insulting word that Shishupal uses, there has actually a double meaning, and you can turn it around to glorify Krishna. Just some examples. Shishupal is saying, you cowherd boy. In this, usually cowherd boys, they are not regarded as something honorable among the kings, and other sages, usually kings and learned people, they feel themselves superior. So cowherd boys, they look as something inferior. So he's making this insult, Gopal, you are a Gopal. And then Sridhar Swami mentioned, but Gopal can also mean the protector of the Vedas and earth. Well, this is kind of a glorification also. Gopal, cowherd, or Gopal, protector of the world and Vedas. But of course, Gopal, we know this is cowherd, is not an insult. Krishna establishes this. He is telling your mother Yashoda, no, I want to go out, I want to herd the cows. So he's showing how the superior position actually of a cowherd boy. Shishupal says, you bring disgrace to your family. Kula Pamshana. Do you bring disgrace to your family? And then Prabhupada explains the Kula Pamshana, you can write it a little differently, Kulapam Amshana, and this can mean that he who vanquishes all misguided, frivolous speculation about Vedas. So one way it means someone who brings disgrace to the family, another way around it means who vanquishes all those people who speculate on the Vedas. So in this way it's a glorification of the Lord. Shishupal says, you are a yata kaka, you are like a crow kakam, but Prabhupada explained you can also kakam, you can separate it differently as ka and aka, and kaka means then someone who is beyond material happiness and misery. So you can insult someone as a crow, but at the same time it can mean someone who is beyond material happiness and miseries. So in this way, Shishupal is making many statements. So he's using insulting words, but actually these words for Krishna, they are not insulting, they are glorification at the end. And I think this similarly, if someone comes and shouts at us or uses some sarcasm or blames us, a devotee, he is never affected by this. He also finds some truth in that word spoken by the other, and but for him, because he is apart from these material conceptions, bodily designations, for him this is not serious. If we call tragedy and comedy, he knows today I will look at it as a tragedy, but in some years, if I look back, this will be just a comedy for me. This has no value. So with this, these were some thoughts which I had. If you have some comments or question you want to add, you can add. Otherwise, we can conclude. So, yes.
Thank you very much for this lecture, and also the many stories was very nice. Just the fact that a devotee is aloof of bodily conception and therefore he is not affected by any insult or something. That is there, but also the devotee is very humble and sees actually everything as true. And in that sense, if somebody criticizes you, for example, it is the best if you think, yeah, actually it is true what he says, so I have to improve in that sense. But especially for myself, I was always very much concerned about that I'm pleasing others in that sense. And of course, on one hand, it's good to please others, but on the other, it's just a false ego thing that we want to have a good reputation. So, what would you advise to differentiate these two things very clearly?
To please someone or to make it just for our reputation?
No, that we really see that I'm feeling sorry or something like that because of my false ego or because of lack of false ego actually. Because if you're not affected by any insult and so on, it's also a sign that you're very proud. But it could be also a sign that you don't identify with the body.
So you mean, so if someone offends you and you don't make it serious, you think this can be either because of no false ego or because of false ego? Because you think, yeah, I'm so proud that I don't care what you mean in this way. You see here, Bharata, when he starts to reply, he will say to Rahugana, your statements, they are on one way true also. He says, I am aloof of it, but at the same time he says, for example, I think text 11, it says, you told me I am dead, though alive, and in one sense this is true, because everything material has a beginning and an end. On the other hand, it's also not true, because we are spiritual, etc. So I think as a devotee, if someone tells you something, and he always finds there's some truth in it also. When Vallabha Bhatta came to Rupa Goswami and offered some corrections in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami, he felt, okay, probably there is some truth in it. When Gopal Chapalu came or made this scene for Srivas Thakur really felt also, I am not worshipping Krishna properly. And I think this is the test one has to make. Every time when we act, etc., what is the motivation behind? Because usually we know our true intention. We know how we feel. And if we observe our feelings, then we can see, am I now reacting because, or if someone insults me and I am not caring for this, is it because I am too proud and think, what does this person know? This would be the reaction of a proud person, saying, what does that person know? I'm much a better person. I don't need to care for him, for these words. That is the one who has too much false ego. And one who has no false ego, when we say he doesn't care, in a sense that he's not going to defend himself, he's not going to go and say, no, what did you say about me? This is not true, actually this is true, this is true. The one who has no false ego, he will not feel this urge to defend himself. He will hear the statements, he will think of it, and probably he will really feel, yes, these words are true. When the acharyas, they sing so prayers, how they feel fallen, they really feel that they are fallen, but they have no urge to go and defend themselves. And I think that would be the difference that one sees. A pride person, he doesn't care what someone else says, but the defending mentality, I think, will be always there. At least he will see that others don't start to speak bad of him also. So at least he will try to make his superiority, he will try to establish his superiority in one way or another. But the one without false ego, he will never establish that. So this is, I would say. So, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
In a lecture hat gesagt, ja, even 80s, die geht so also die kommen so viel Intelligenz über, oder dass sie können die erste Theorie aufstellen, wie Krishna nicht existiert. Und Krishna sagt ja, alle Intelligenz kommt von mir. Und dort, wo du gesagt hast, ja, eben alles kommt von Krishna und auch die Intelligenz kommen von Krishna über, und das zeigt auch, wie wunderbar Krishna ist, oder wie er jedem wirklich einfach seine Wünsche erfüllt, und in dieser Ironie so, also uns die Intelligenz gibt, uns wirklich gegen ihn zu stellen, und darum kann das gar nicht sein, dass wir Krishna offenden, weil die Intelligenz können wir ja einfach, sonst würden sie gar nicht gehen. Das macht Krishna, dass eben es auch solche Leute gibt, die gegen sind, das zeigt auch über, wie wunderbar das ist. Das ist mega mindblowing, oder? Wir werden dann sehr gestört, aber eben im Ganzen gesehen kann überhaupt gar nicht wie schlecht sein. Das ist
für ihn niemand, also vor allem auch Krishna, das ist privilegiert und kann dir auch eine schlechte Reputation geben, oder? Das gibt es auch, aber für ihn ist das Peanuts. Und es gibt immer Leute. Letztens habe ich auch ein Statement bezüglich Kunti Maharani gehört, wo er über die schlechte Beziehung gesagt hat, aber ich denke, die reinen Devotees, wo das hält, oder so groß. Sogar für die gibt es immer Leute, wo die Schlacht findet. Und ich immer so Ironie schon sagt. Ja.
Aber was am ironischsten ist ja, dass der Brigomund, ich kann mir das immer nicht so gut vorstellen, weil Vishnu ist ja extrem, also ich meine, aus dem Nabel von Vishnu kommt in der Rama und er erschafft das Universum. Irgendein Brigomuni, wie groß, also wie ist das grösste Verhältnis, wenn man sich das nicht vorstellt,
Ja, das
wenn
ist
er Vishnu kriegt, oder? Das ist ja...
Das ist dann gar nicht so geschrieben, das sei Vishnu. Oder das macht, ja, so ein schräger Typ. Gaben das sei Vishnu, ich glaube, die treffen ihn ja nicht.
Ja, okay.
Und das ist, glaube ich, nicht der geschriebene das sei Vishnu. Aber natürlich, er ist groß. Und Wünschgröße.
Ja, aber wenn man sich das Bild vorstellt, wenn so ein winzige Seele sozusagen ankommt und der kriegt und dann die Brahma und Shiva sind ja mega affected von seinem von seinem Insult eigentlich.
Ja.
Aber wenn es halt so ein kleiner Part ist von Krishna, dann ist es auch, also ja, ist auch lustig, ob sich das vorstellt.